In part 1, our hero was shocked to see a young squire instantly drop dead after he accidentally killed the damsel in distress. That odd form of dying, which matched that of the king who died before he could bestow knighthood on our hero, was not magic, but the usual effect of the poisonous blood of the dreaded dragpie, as our hero discovered. This discovery enabled him to safely recover the beloved treasure box that the dead damsel was carrying. Just before laying his hands on the treasure box, he was discovered by a marauding band of soldiers of the evil king, and was forced to flee without inspecting his prize. After unceremoniously announcing the death of the princess, he hastily produced the treasure box, and the aggrieved queen cleared the chamber, only to discover that the box was filled with worthless baubles. Meanwhile, outside the queen's chamber, the officer, who had carefully taken up a position by the door, overheard her shout, "That scoundrel!" He knows the queen is grieved by her loss, but he is also aware Reginald is an honorable warrior. So he warns Reginald that he would likely have to defend his claims against the queen. Reginald decides that the reward, not worth the risk of being wrongly prosecuted for fraud or worse by an aggrieved sovereign. With a quick and helpful bit of advice from his honorary comrade-in-arms about the quickest method of exiting the castle and leaving the capital city, he beats a hasty retreat to resume his life on the road. Reginald is sad to find himself a vagabond, and finds that this life is a great disappointment compared to the posh knightly life he had eagerly anticipated through his years of training. He resorts to scavenging and other unknightly pursuits to survive, as he awaits his opportunity to make things right. Years later, plague and pestilence strike the evil king's realm, and even kills his queen. In order to keep his enemies at bay, he quickly arranges to be married to a very young princess in a nearby kingdom. Sensing that the recent misfortunes of the people of his kingdom have brought about a great dread, the king decides to make a show of his wealth by putting the greatest treasure of his realm in a magnificently jeweled treasure chest for display during the marriage festivities. Unbeknownst to him, the festivities, and especially the shiny display of treasure, attracts the attention of a certain dragpie that is still living in the mountains nearby. Just moments after their exchange of vows, the dragpie descends. The evil king is immediately impaled by the dragpie. Then the new queen and the jeweled treasure chest are each seized in a claw as the dragpie takes flight. Afterwards, the regent of the realm offers the entire kingdom to anyone who can rescue the vulnerable new queen and recover the treasure. The offer quickly spreads throughout all the known realms. When Reginald hears about it, he realizes it is the opportunity he's been waiting for. He immediately returns to his former kingdom, but on the way, he goes to visit the ancient nun who had first taught him about dragpies. Reginald learns that the nun had continued her annual pilgrimage ever since they had last met. In the subsequent years, the pious recluse had noticed that it had accumulated numerous skeletons. The locals renamed it the Shrine of Bad Tidings. Reginald returns to the shrine. The dragpie, now generally looking the worse for wear, has pinned the young queen to the ground with sticks through her elaborate wedding dress and deposited the jeweled chest on top of the tallest mound. Reginald quickly lures the bird beast away, and after freeing the young queen, informs her that they are dealing with a dragpie, and that using his customary weapons to eliminate it as a threat would likely be suicide. She offers to help him. The young queen tells Reginald about how she occasionally escaped the boredom of courtly life by seeking out the gamekeeper of the kingdom where she was raised. He had taught her to trap birds by using a snare made of sticks and string. She notes that the birds caught in her traps almost never shed any blood. Reginald accepts her offer, and they immediately reduce her wedding dress to a more manageable outfit for matching wits against a dragpie in the wilderness. Reginald figures that such a trap can be made large with a slight modification, eliminate the beast with little or no handling to minimize any possible exposure to, deadly bodily fluids. Together, they take the jeweled chest and make their way to a very deep lake near the timberline of the tallest peak nearby. Reginald and the queen together build a giant snare that consists of a rope tied in a loop that passes over a huge tree to a huge rock that is tied to the other end. The trap is set on the shore of a lake with the jeweled chest serving as the bait. The loop is connected to the rock, which is held precariously perched on a sheer granite cliff over a very deep place in the lake by a stout tree branch that is also tied into the loop trap. By mimicking its occasional cries from the valley below, the young queen lures the dragpie to where it can see the jeweled chest. Upon seeing the glint of the jewels in the bright sunshine, the dragpie soon trips the trap. The loop instantly closes around the dragpie's neck. The bird's movement yanks away the branch, and the great rock falls into the lake, taking the avian beast to a watery grave without any bloodshed. Reginald and the queen return in triumph. The regent fulfills his promise and makes Reginald king after the queen abdicates her crown in exchange for an estate and the opportunity to come of age before deciding if marrying Reginald would be the right thing to do in order to regain her sovereignty. But, alas, while ridding the kingdom of the dreaded dragpie and finally righting the wrongs of the evil king were great accomplishments, the warrior does not outwit the plague and the pestilence. After the exhilaration of his triumph wears off, they all fall ill and live out the rest of their short days in sadness and misery until nature herself reclaims the entire kingdom as her own. The end. Now, you must be wondering, what kind of fairy tale is it that ends in sadness, misery, and mass death? This fairy tale is an exploration of what might be the truth of our own fate as a species. But it does not have to be that way if we can learn from the failures in this story. The realm in dire straits is our global human society. We need to rescue the vulnerable, retrieve the greatest treasure ever known, and provide for the health and wellness of everyone. We cannot quit this game, so we need to know the true boundaries of the playing field, and the boundaries need to be clear enough that almost everyone can understand them. The hero's challenge is first to survive and then to thrive. A hero attains that status by having difficult goals that involve a major obstacle that prevents just anyone from achieving them. But there are also inherent boundaries to how those goal states have to come about. Those boundaries create the playing field that defines what game the hero must play. Accidentally beheading a damsel in distress is a losing move. We as a human species have to stay within the bounds of our playing field because sometimes thinking outside the box is a losing move, not a creative one. In order to become a hero, you have to play the right game for the circumstances. When the young squire confronted what he thought was just an oversized magpie, he did not really understand the game he needed to play. If you don't pay close enough attention to the right details of your situation, you can inadvertently put yourself and the people you love in harm's way. Recovering a chest full of worthless baubles is also a losing move. You have to keep your eyes on the prize. It's no good to let your success get to your head and lose track of what is required. And finally, when Reginald could not cure the plague and stop the pestilence, he lost again. And sometimes when the hero fails, the whole kingdom will suffer or perhaps cease to be. In this case, it was a challenge that was simply beyond his ability and resources to handle. They were living in the time of knights in shining armor. All the wealth in their world could not buy the medicine and the public health measures that did not exist. Today, however, we have everything we need to play and win the heroic game of our time. The problem is knowing what the game is and the implicit boundaries that define success. Once again, the realm in dire straits is our global human society. We need to rescue the vulnerable, retrieve the greatest treasure ever known, and provide for the health and wellness of everyone. We cannot quit this game, so we need to know the true boundaries of the playing field, and the boundaries need to be clear enough that almost everyone can understand them. For me, K-12 education is the place to start. Here's a nutshell view of K-12 that is explained in more detail in my upcoming book, Nurture, Mending Our Education System. The K-12 school system presents most children with a hidden curriculum of behavioral demands that are impossible for them to comply with, due to their primary human needs for autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Primary means that these needs are connected to well-being in the same way that air, water, food, shelter, and sleep are connected to well-being. When children are forced into situations in which these needs are routinely thwarted, then they are in harm's way. Naturally, avoiding harm is fully justified. Unfortunately, avoidance in this case takes the forms of dropping out, failing to achieve, or faux achievement, which is going through the motions to get system-approved achievements without mastering the material. I was an expert faux achiever. The amazing consistency of the empirical evidence demonstrates that mainstream K-12 schools usually thwart the primary needs of the children in them, with the result that the vast majority of students disengage in some form or another from the educational opportunities they've been offered. It is time for schools to start supporting children to satisfy their primary human needs. It has been by mandating maximum exposure to instructional delivery of content that our society has survived. Maximizing exposure to instructional delivery of content in this game of educational chance has failed to deliver a proper education to the majority of students, including me. But that has not mattered, because it has been offset by a random bunch of people who stumble upon proper educational outcomes to carry our society forward. It turns out that the assumption that education consists of content delivery, while popular and intuitively seductive, it is false. Learning is about growing mental maps. Acquiring information is a part of the process, but that acquisition must occur in the context of meaningful goals and self-motivated efforts to navigate the world in their pursuit. When goals are personally meaningless or efforts are mandated by distrusted authorities, then the information acquired is mostly useless. The production of winners by this strategy has relied on the accidental alignment of multiple levels of goals, from the individual to the organizational to the societal. Imposing standardized goals based on the long odds that different levels will occasionally align, such that just enough education will result to keep our society healthy, is no longer an appropriate strategy for education. The good news is that we, as a society, can now consider a safer educational bet based on the successful solutions that have been developed by innovative schools that have proven they succeed at systematically supporting primary human needs. The innovators I am referring to have solved the key problem in K-12 by requiring their students to prove that they are properly motivated before providing instruction. Independently of whether or not they require content qualifications, they always require motivational qualifications. Bringing these kinds of successful schooling methods to scale will require a heroic effort. We must play the right game, save the vulnerable, recover the treasure, and provide for well-being. Right now, in K-12, the right game is paradigm shift. We need to change our way of thinking about education from information delivery to growing mental maps. Success at growing mental maps requires that we acknowledge what our students' goals are, honor their aspirations even as we help them eliminate the flaws in their existing maps of how to pursue their goals, and start our work with whatever resources they happen to bring to the pursuit of their goals, and supplementing those resources if and when that is possible and appropriate. The vulnerable that need to be saved are, of course, the children. Over 30 years of consistent scientific data has shown that in mainstream schools, the children's intrinsic motivation and engagement decline during the school years. This is alarming because intrinsic motivation and engagement are associated with both the best learning outcomes and with well-being. There is hope, however, because a few alternatives have recently been studied and shown to maintain intrinsic motivation and engagement. They appear to have either solved the problem or avoided it in the first place. And it is likely that other schools are already doing a similarly good job, but haven't been studied in the right way to show it. The treasure that needs to be recovered is access to optimal states of mind. Optimal states of mind are what we experience when we are fully engaged with the world. It is only through enabling more people more reliable access to optimal states of mind that we will ultimately succeed, because optimal states of mind and intrinsic motivation are both dependent on the meeting of primary human needs. Finally, heroes provide for well-being. Today, that means that we need to pay attention to the well-being of all the levels of systems that support us as human beings. My book, Nurture, Mending Our Education System, is my invitation to you to join in the heroes game of today. We have all the tools and resources we need to win this game. The boundaries of the playing field are known. The vulnerable are within reach. The treasure is one that we're all blessed with access to, and as a society, we have all the knowledge and skill we need to ensure well-being for everyone. The first step is to nurture the children, but we also need to keep our eyes on the prize and be clear about what is required for long-term success. For more information, please visit schoolsofconscience.org. Thanks for watching.